Alright, so welcome back to another Honor of King guide video. Today's topic will be on arcana. And let's just start right away. First, I want to say there's five categories of heroes out there. There's your mages, your tanks, warriors, assassins, and marksmen. Alright, let's start with marksman arcana. Right, so normally, marksman, let's just go to a marksman that don't play at all, Garu, so that I can remove all the arcana and show you how to build. So for the first green one, it's pretty self-explanatory. All right. Usually it's all gonna be eagle eye, cause this is the arcana that give you physical pierce, and physical pierce is super important. You want to have a bit of physical pierce at the start so that it can deal um like much higher damage to the enemy, can pierce through the enemy defenses in the early game a lot better. But this arcana, right, there's a downside to it, is that in the late game it makes no difference at all. Um, this arcana is purely for your early game. So usually this is what you go with for marksman, and for the red one, um, don't ever use red moon, and don't ever use the thing that gives you crit damage. Don't ever use unparalleled. This thing over here. These two are a trap. If you are playing a marksman who's crit based, right, always use calamity. Calamity gives you the most value, the most bang for your buck. Right, so just go all calamity here. The reason for that is because it has synergy with this item passive here. As long as your crit reaches 60%, right, you will max out your crit damage with this item passive. So there's no need for you to get any crit damage from arcana. Just stack your crit, and then eventually, once you hit the 60% mark, you will get the maximum crit damage. Alright, so for the blue one, usually I like to go 9 Weaver and then 1 Hunt. Right? You can honestly build more Hunt, but personally I like more lifesteal. And the reason I go with 1 Hunt is because um 1% attack speed, the attack frequency that you deal with 1% attack speed is actually higher than 0%. So there's actually a jump in tier in the attack frequency. So if you actually bring your character to 1% attack speed instead of 0 right at the start, you'll be dishing out more damage than you think because of the way the character attack animation is done. So yeah, just bring 1% um, attack speed arcana. Don't just build all lifesteal arcana. I think that's pretty much it. And another build that I've been experimenting is this build over here. Right, just remove all. So these two are the same. A crit based marksman will always use calamity here, that will never change. And then the blue one again is good for marksman, is going to be a bunch of lifesteal and a bunch of hunt. This will never change as well. But the green one, I've been experimenting with this thing over here, with void. Why? Because this gives you a bunch of cooldown reduction. Alright. In fact, for Lung, right, I'm already using this arcana over here. If you go to my Lung's arcana, I'm using Beast Scar on him. And the reason for that is, if you take a look at his build, right, there's two items that give him 40% crit. So I need another 20% from his arcana so that I can maximize crit damage. And so if you go to arcana page here, this gives me 16% crit. I get my remaining 4% from all of this Beast Scar's arcana. What's good about this Beast Scar arcana is it gives you crit, that's this one thing, but it also gives you a ton of HP. 60 health is pretty much the highest that you're going to get from an arcana. Um, so yeah, you get very tanky, and then you get a lot of crit as well. So I think Beast Scar is another very underrated arcana. I think most of the time people use this tool for their marksman, but sometimes you can use Beast Scar as well in certain situations. It actually increases your tankiness. So it really have sort of like inbuilt sustain skill for your marksman, then you can give up on your River Arcana and get this Arcana. And I'll always have 1 hunt for my marksman. So yeah, and if you go to the green arcana, right, you can see that I'm using void instead of the EOI. The reason for that is because I'm building this item over here. I'm building pierce items, right? Percentage pierce items. Once you build percentage pierce item, right, you don't necessarily need direct pierce anywhere in your build or your arcana because of the way physical defense, physical pierce is calculated, and in fact, magic defense and magic pierce as well. They will always first minus off the direct pierce portion. So if you have 64 pierce and the enemy has like 464, let's make it 164 so that it's a bit easier. Let's say the enemy have 164 defense and then you have 64 pierce in arcana. The system will first minus off the 64 pierce, so you get 100. The enemy is left with 100 defense, and then 100, then you minus off the 30% from the pierce here, so the enemy is left with 70 physical defense. That's the way it is calculated. But now notice that if you remove the 64 um, pierce, right, the enemy is left with 164 defense at the start. Then you take 70% of that. Um, you don't lose that much pierce, is what I'm trying to say. Because the percentage pierce, right, deducts from the enemy's original value. So if the enemy has higher pierce, higher defenses, then you will deduct more with this item's passive, with the physical percentage pierce. So if the enemy has less, then you will deduct less, which is why once you have percentage pierce, right, direct physical pierce or direct magic pierce is not that important anymore, because it sort of conflicts with um, the percentage pierce items. All right, so that's why usually for marksman they go with percentage pierce item, right? Everybody except for Lady Sun will not use X or Torment here. Most marksmen will use these two items over here. So there's really no need for you to get pierce in your arcana sets. It's only pretty much in the early game where you don't have those pierce items yet. By the late game, right, you find that this void arcana actually do you a lot more good because it gives you HP, it gives you a base of survivability, and also gives you a bit of cooldown reduction so they can spam your survivability skills. Like if you're playing a Marco, playing the Ali, you get that additional dash or something. Your dash refreshes a lot bit more so that you have more room for error. So that's why I'm transitioning over to void instead of EOI. Okay. Generally, right, for all the arcanas, I think HP is king. I already mentioned HP is a very underrated stat. Is the most important stat for me. Be it in my build or in my arcana. Um, HP will always be the most important factor. Um, so I've run a bit of calculation, and people before me have also done that, and to find that HP is the best stat for value item. What I mean by that is, if you go into the shop here, and if you go to the no-base items, you can actually calculate the value of each stat. So let's say that this gives you 10% attack speed, right? So essentially what this means is when the money gold translate to 1% attack speed, this one one attack physical attack is about 12.5 gold. So we can actually derive the gold value for each stat using this. And if you go to the HP item, right, you find that HP gives you the most value for money. All right, because HP item is pretty expensive. If you take the base value of this, right, 1 HP is 1 gold. All right, and you can use this to calculate sort of the gold value equivalent of each arcana, and they actually figure out that HP items that give you arcana that give you HP is the most value for gold. Yeah, so that's why I tend to lean my character towards more HP items, HP arcanas. Alright, so I think that covers the marksman arcana set. Next, we'll move on to the mages. Mages pretty much only use one arcana set. Okay, let's not go to Zuko. Mm, let's go to this woman over here. Right, usually mage only use one arcana. I don't really recommend mage use any other arcana sets. Mind's Eye. Actually, I will show you an alternative one later on, but usually this is the standard mage build. So what this two arcana does is essentially gives you 88 pierce. Pierce is very important for mage. Usually mage go with direct pierce instead of percentage pierce. So unlike their physical damage counterparts. So this two arcana is pretty much fixed for all mages. This arcana over here, usually I just use harmony. Um, what this does is it gives you a bit of movement speed. It also gives you a lot of health, so it gives you a bit of sustain. The health over time is nice, but usually it doesn't matter too much for me. The main thing I'm caring about is the maximum health that I give you. Alright, so some people like to use avarice here. Now, I highly don't recommend this. In fact, the passive heal on over time that you on this arcana sort of already outshines the lifesteal that you will get from this arcana over here. That's because of the way magical lifesteal is calculated in this game. 1.6 magical lifesteal doesn't mean that you heal 1.6% of the damage you actually deal. The actual number is something like 1.6 times one third. So you only heal like 0.53% of the damage that you deal. Right, the number is a lot lower than you think. So magic lifesteal is not that great because there's a multiplier. Every different mage have a multiplier. Their skills have a multiplier between 0.25 to 0.5. So um, the actual amount that heal is this multiplier times the magical lifesteal. It is not like taking the magical lifesteal directly from this arcana and multiplying by your damage output. So yeah, people always get this misconception that the magical lifesteal is a bit better than it is. In my opinion, it's a pretty garbage stat. Alright, stacking a lot of magical lifesteal will not make you super tanky, make you have a lot of sustain. In my opinion, if you want sustain, um, get the heal over time arcana. I also get this holy grail, which gives you percentage health over time, which is a lot better than lifesteal in my opinion. So pretty much just fix your mages to this arcana over here. Now, if you want to be a bit experimental like me, right, you can choose a different route here. This is what I built for my Lady Gen. Again, this two arcana is more or less fixed. I will always use this harmony for my mages instead of any lifesteal arcana. I'll also not use this arcana ever. Hunt. The reason for that is because it does give you movement speed, but you don't really need attack speed on your mages, right? Also, you don't get any HP from this arcana. So what you are losing out on is a lot of HP for a bit of movement speed, which I feel is completely not like worth it. 400 HP for 6% movement speed is absolutely not worth it in my opinion. So you're also losing the health on time. Health on time again is not that great, but it is something. So that's why I don't use the Hunt Arcana ever, except for my marksman. Alright, so the only changes on this build is this green Arcana over here. I'm using a mixture of Void and also a mixture of Mind's Eye. Mind's Eye is your standard mage Arcana, but I'm using a bit of Void in here. And the reason for that is because if you go to my overall stat here, right, you can see that I have 4.6 CDR on the mage. Why? It's because if you take a look at my build, right, um, take a look at my support build, you can see that this thing gives me 15%. The support item gives me another 15%, which makes up for 30%. And then this thing, Frozen Breath, over here, which is a utility mage item, gives me 5%. Alright, so I have a total of 35% CDR. And I need 40% so that I can keep spamming my skills. So I get the last 5% from my Arcana. The reason I have 8 of this Void here instead of 9 or 10 is because if I get any more than 8, then I'll eventually be getting more than 5% CDR. The maximum CDR cap is 40. So in the late game, I'm actually losing a bit of CDR because I've hit the cap. I went over the cap. So I feel like it's not really worth it because I'm losing some stats for no reason, which is why I keep my Void Arcana at 8. Alright, you can honestly have less of this or more of this. Sorry, less of this and then more of this Mind's Eye. But I recommend the 8:2 ratio. Okay, I think that's all for majors. I think it's pretty standard. Usually it's just this Arcana set, but again, if you want to be experimental, you can throw in some Void Arcana. Right, next will be tanks. I don't really play tanks, but if you want to play tank, um, just get your HP. Um, yeah, zhangfei is pretty much the only tank that I'll ever play. So on him, I'm using a bunch of tank Arcana. Um, the good thing about Fate Arcana is that it gives you HP and also a bit of attack speed. Um, there's I don't think there's a lot of other raid Arcana that give you HP. This is pretty much the only Arcana gives you HP. So if there's ever is a marksman. Oh, by the way, I use this for Foods as well. Because Foods is supposed to be a frontliner, it's supposed to be tanky. So for his raid Arcana, I also bring in a bunch of like a bunch of Fate. The reason for that is Foods does not actually require attacks. Sorry, crit Arcana. Usually, what people build of Foods is this Red Moon over here. For me, this is not such a good option because it gives you a little bit of crit, which Foods does not use at all. Foods relies a lot more on attack speed. So you are losing out on a lot of HP for a little bit of crit and a little bit of attack speed, which I don't think is worth it at all. The HP again is king, so also losing out a bit of physical defense on that for this pretty useless stat over here. So personally, I feel it's not worth it at all. Um, so for all your tanks and all your tanky warrior, right, just go with this Fate Arcana. For the green one, use Void. Usually for your warriors, you can use this Eagle Eye as well. It's up to you. If you are using a percentage pierce item, then I highly recommend you instead of going for the Eagle Eye, just go with Void. The reason Fu Zi goes with Void is because he doesn't really need Pierce because his basic attack does true damage, additional true damage to the enemy. So he doesn't need any Pierce at all in this kit. He just needs HP and attack speed. So and he also needs CDR to spam his skills. That's why this is a lot more better than Eagle Eye in my opinion. And the do one is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a HP and movement speed Arcana. Um, some people ask why you don't go with Beast over here. That's because while this gives you a bit more HP, it also gives you crit rate, which you really won't use at all with Fuzi. Also, you are losing some movement speed for the crit, which is a pretty worthless stat for Fuzi. And the movement speed, if you just use a bunch of Beast, your movement speed will be so low that you feel like you have a pretty horrible game experience. So this Arcana Harmony will give you a baseline 4% movement speed, um, and then it will also give you a bunch of HP. I feel like this blue Arcana over here is probably one of the best out there because it gives you the two most important stats, which is HP and movement speed. Yeah. So I think that's it for the tanks. Now on to the warriors. Let's go. So tanky warriors should essentially use the same build, Arcana build as the tanks. But if you're talking about an attack-based warrior, right, or offensive warrior, let's see, like Dharma or something. Then you want to go with this Arcana over here. Remove all. You want to go with Eagle Eye, because it gives you Pierce. And then for this, you want to just stack Pierce on your skill-based warriors. If you're a crit-based warrior like a Tina, right, it's a bit more different because you will go with crit Calamity here. But if you are a regular warrior, all right, remove all. If you are a regular warrior, then you want to stack Pierce. So for a red arcana, there's only one arcana that really gives you pierce, which is mutation over here. Alright, and then for your blue arcana, we'll always go with harmony. Again, because this gives you HP and a bunch of movement speed. It allows you to be tanking while not losing out the movement speed. I already mentioned why this arcana is better than Hunt in my opinion because of the max health that it gives you. So yeah, this is my standard arcana for skill-based warriors. In fact, if you go to my Rules arcana set, right, you can see that I'm also using more or less this build over here. I throw in a single Fate arcana because I want that 1% attack speed at the start of the game so that I can attack the jungle monsters a little bit faster. But the rest of it is just mutation and eagle eye. Alright, so now on to the assassins. Actually, I'm already looking at assassin right now. For assassin, pretty much the same thing as your offensive warriors. Just use this arcana set. If you are crit based assassin, like a Wukong or something, you should replace the mutation with crit. Yeah. I'm also experimenting or something. So if you go to Wukong's, not Wukong, my arcers build over here, right? Where is arker? Okay. Oh, arker is here. If you go to my arcers build, right? I haven't set it on this account, but if I were to build her, I would go with void instead. I'll go with something like this. And then, sorry, this should be crit damage for archer. Because archer need a lot of crit damage here. And then this will be your harmony. I'll use a bunch of harmony here. So the reason I use this, right, is because you have a percentage pierce item in the build. This is not supposed to be a build. This is my build for her. So I want this thing at the start, and I want a CDR boot, and then I want a Eternity Blade. Eternity Blade is going to be very useful for archer. Alright, and then another one of the core item is this item over here, Starbreaker. Alright, and then I want to max out my jungling item after this item over here. And then after that will be pretty much optional items. I will go with the Siege Breaker. And also this item which gives me a bit of survivability. Alright, something like that. Yeah, so this item, the reason I built this item is because Arke doesn't really need this item over here. She needs to go all in. Her kit is one that goes all in. So honestly, you need all of her item to be physical attack item. If you want physical defense, you can also go with this item as well. This item just gives me a lot of magic defense. So if the enemy has a heavy mage line up there, I'll use this item here. It doesn't really sacrifice physical attack for a bunch of magic defense because um, of its pretty good stat line. So that's why this item gives me a bit of room for error, which is why I use it on most assassins. Yeah, so the last item is just there to deal massive damage to the enemy. So usually I have this Starbreaker item early on Archer, which is why there's no real need for me to use Eagle Eye here, because I already mentioned that direct pierce sort of conflicts with this percentage pierce because of the way pierce is calculated in this game. Okay, so I think that covers all the classes: mage, marksman, tanks, tanky warriors, offensive warriors, and assassins. I hope you enjoyed this video. I think to end off, right, let's talk about all the arcanas in general. Okay, let's remove all, and then we'll actually go through the arcana one by one. So the most often used arcana is your Eagle Eye or Mind's Eye arcana, for the green one. Obviously, because those two gives you Pierce, followed by Void. This gives you HP and CDR. Honestly, these are the three arcana, green arcana that you ever need. The rest of it is honestly pretty garbage. For me, Reverberation is absolutely not worth it. Because the amount of physical defense, the amount of magic defense it gives you is so low that it's absolutely negligible. Generally physical defense and magic defense arcana is not worth it at all. So don't ever get any with like physical defense or magic defense stats like this one over here. All right, fortify gives you a bunch of defenses as well, so just ignore those. Compassion gives you a bunch of CDR, but the reason for it not being used is because that you already have void over here. A void gives you a mix of CDR and also max health. So if you actually compare this compassion arcana, right, at level 5, let's just upgrade this. At level 5, it gives you 1% CDR. Compare this with this thing over here, void. You are sacrificing 0.4% CDR for 37.5 health. That's not worth it at all, in my opinion. Um, so if you multiply this by 10, you're losing 4% CDR for 375 health. 375 health, right, is not a negligible amount, but 4% CDR is a negligible amount. So, in my opinion, compassion is always not worth it over void. Void is sort of a superior version of compassion. So, if I need CDR, I will always get void instead of compassion. Yeah. So, you have what's left? You have cognizance, gives you magic defense as well. Again, defensive stats free garbage. Tribute gives you magic attack. You don't really need magic attack on anybody. Magic attack is an overrated stat. Um, the reason why people go for mind's eye or eagle eye is not for their magic attack or physical attack, it's for their pierce. Alright, pierce is a pretty important stat. Magic attack is a very less important stat. So if you need CDR, go with the other item, the HP item. This void over here, and you will never ever use this tribute arcana. As for the red arcana, calamity, red moon, nightmare, mutation, fate, these are the 5 arcana that you ever need. Unparalleled, uh, you can use it on certain heroes like arke and wukong, but besides arke and wukong, I don't think I know of any hero that really uses this arcana. That's because this arcana actually conflicts with this item over here. If you ever need crit damage, right, this item lets you cap out on the crit damage that you ever need. You don't really need to get additional crit damage from your arcana sets because of that item. So overall, this unparalleled is pretty useless in my opinion, except for wukong and arke. Conflict is another arcana that is gives you physical attack, which you don't really need. It gives you lifesteal as well, which is good, but normally you get all your lifesteal from blue arcana. You don't really need any more lifesteal other than the lifesteal from blue arcana. The main reason for this not being used is it gives you physical attack, which you don't really need. So you are losing out a bit of stats for physical attack, which is a very overrated stat in my opinion. So this arcana is not useful. Sin gives you magic attack again. You already know my thoughts on physical and magic attack. They are overrated. Next will be Oban. Again, gives you a magic attack, which you don't really need. Even if you need a bunch of attack speed, right? This is not where you get the attack speed from. If you need attack speed, go with this arcana over here, Fate. Right. Um, and inheritance also gives you physical attack, which you don't really need. Okay, as for blue arcana, Everest, River, Harmony, Han, Biscar is the 5 arcana that you ever need. Reincarnation gives you magic attack, so it's out of the question. Mediation gives you max health. How much max health does it actually give you? 60 max health with a bit of heal over time. That's pretty respectable, but that is superseded by this arcana over here. This arcana gives you movement speed on top of health. So this arcana automatically already sort of trumps any health arcana out there. So the reason for people not using this arcana is not because this arcana is bad, it's decent, but it's because this harmony arcana is just pretty overpowered. Yeah, so if you need HP, just get this arcana over here. What's left? Prosperity gives you magic defense, which you don't need. Um, Longevity gives you max health. That's pretty good, but again, if you want health, just get this arcana because it gives you movement speed as well. Stealth. Now, I think we'll end this video off with an explanation of why I don't use stealth. It's because it gives you physical attack. Now, if you level up this to level 5, right, it gives you 1.6 physical attack. Gives you 1% movement speed as well. So you would think that this is good on assassins, but I actually run a bit of calculation and I figure out that even for assassins, right, health is a lot more important than physical attack unless your AD scaling is off the charts. It's really, really off the chart, then I guess you can use stealth. In most cases, HP is going to be your best friend. Um, 1.6 physical attack is very, very, very low. All right. If you multiply this by 10, is 16 physical attack, 16 AD. I'll just call it AD. And then if you multiply this by 10, it's 450 health. If you do a simple calculation, right, go to the shop here. Um, remember that 1 HP is 1 gold. Uh, so if you are taking 450 health, that's 450 gold. All right. And how much gold worth of physical attack do you have? You have less than 300 gold worth of physical attack. You only get 16. So realistically, it's around 1/3 of this iron sword gold amount. So you get 200 gold worth of stats. All right, as opposed to 450 gold worth of stat. Okay, so you're sacrificing a lot more stats just for the additional physical attack, which I think is completely not worth it. All right, you're losing more than half of the gold value of the item. So that's why I use the arcana that I use. All right, hopefully this video is useful for you guys. And I think with that, I will end the stream here. I will include all the timestamps for the arcana in the video description. All right, so click on those if you need my explanations for specific arcana. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video guide. Next video guide will be on heroes, um, specifically roaming heroes. I think I already talked about heroes in general in my tier list video, but I'll talk about roaming heroes and their counter picks in the next video. So see you guys there.